Hello, everybody. Welcome to Launch Anxiety. I am Maria Dado, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And today, the big question is, should I make my teens attend family holiday gatherings? Over and over again, I get asked from parents, should I force them? Are they going to regret not coming and being a part of the family? What about tradition? Isn't that important? How else do I teach our values? Should I make them come even though they seem resistant, even though they're moody, even though they don't want to? What do I do? So we are going to cover all of that and more today, but I do want to let you know I talk better when I've got my hands busy. So today I am very on theme, and I am sewing little felted stars for a star garland for the holiday season. I thought that was on theme with the topic today, so I invite you to pull up some sort of handiwork and listen as we talk about if you should make your teens, if you should force them to go to family holiday gatherings. All right. If I finish this, we'll see. I'll post some pictures of it on the blog that goes with this podcast as well. All right, let's dive in. So I hear this question a lot from parents, and I wish I had an answer. I wish I could just be like, yep, force them. They'll be glad you did. No, I'm not going to say that. It depends. It always depends. That's always going to be the answer. It depends. And I know that that gets exhausting to hear, but really it depends. And it depends on so many things. But the biggest thing it depends on is your teen and your relationship with your teen. And the answer to whether or not you should strongly encourage your teen to attend family stuff, even if they're reluctant to, depends so much on your relationship with them and your history and their trust in you. One of the hardest things I think about parenting teenagers is that they are full of contradiction. Sometimes teenagers want you to just toss them the keys to the car, and they want to not have to tell you what's going on or where they're going or what is happening. And they want to be treated like a full-blown adult who's very independent. And other times they want you to make the phone call to the doctor for them, or they want to lay on the couch while you bring them water, and they act like they're about 4 years old again. That's just part of parenting teenagers, is that very intense up and down, push-pull, kind of back and forth feeling. And I don't know if you can remember that feeling, but I do. I definitely do. I definitely remember feeling like in some instances, in some areas of my life, that I was a fully capable human being who didn't want to have to check in with anybody. And then other times I felt like a helpless little baby and I wanted to snuggle and be taken care of. And honestly, I don't think we lose that as adults. I'm sure there's still times when all of us want both of those things. But it's confusing for a teenager because of their stage of development and because they're asking us as the parent to very often go back and forth with them, which can be a little whiplashy and can feel a little hypocritical sometimes, or can feel like they're asking for two very, very different modes. So it can be hard, but I think just first acknowledging the fact that that is very par for the course with teenagers, that sometimes they do want to be seen as an adult who makes their own decisions, and sometimes they want to be seen more as a littler, younger kid who needs their parents. And that's okay. That's very normal, very developmentally appropriate. So sometimes they don't even know which one they want. They might want to do their own thing or go off with their friends, but they also still have a sense of wanting to belong. And it can feel really disjointed as a teenager to not know which thing that they want, much less communicate it articulately and maturely to a parent. Anytime where you've got these kind of big roller coastery strong feelings, they exist and they're hard to deal with on just a regular Tuesday, but everything gets exacerbated by holidays. Holiday season brings out the intense in everybody, whether it's just like the expectations and the idea of trying to have good holidays, or it's the time. Like there's just a lot of events happening. There's just a lot going on. There's parties or there's performances or all sorts of gatherings. So they can often, it's just adding fuel to the fire for teenagers. And the deal here is that as much as you might want to, you cannot strong arm a teen into having a meaningful family connection. You can't force that. Even if you can force them physically to be there, you can't force them to take something positive from it. You can't force them to have a good experience from it or to create a good experience for the others around them. So you just can't coerce that. So what you have to be looking at and focusing on way before the holiday season starts is forming the kind of relationship with your teenager where they want to participate or where they trust you. So when you say, hey, this thing is really important to me, please come, they trust you and want to give that to you. But you've got to work from forever, from a very young age, on having the kind of relationship with them where it's a conversation, where it's a back and forth, where there's compromise, where there's respect, and where there's trust and a desire to give. I think an important part too is to stop and think from their perspective for a minute also. If they're resistant to the idea of going to a holiday event, whatever that is, and even if they have loved going to that holiday event for 15 years, they might decide this year they don't want to. And it's important to recognize why. Put yourself in their shoes and normalize the fact that very often teens resist even something that they loved for, the last 15 years. And there's a lot of really valid reasons why they might resist it. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're just antisocial or they don't care about good things anymore or that they're rejecting you. Sometimes they are just straight exhausted. We put so much pressure on our teenagers. Often holiday season, even though we're busy with all sorts of things, it's also their break from school or sports or that kind of thing. Or sometimes those things ramp up, where we've got more performances, you've got tests, you've got social drama, you've got all sorts of things kind of at their height and at their peak. Sleep and schedules are weird, holiday chaos on top of it, everybody's fried. Another very healthy, normal, appropriate reason they might not want to is just straight up differentiating themselves from their parents. This is the task of adolescence. Separation, individualizing themselves away from their family. It's sad when it happens often. It can be scary to watch it happen, but it is a part of our development to separate from the people that made us, and to take steps away, to become more independent, to become more self-sustaining. Now, this is the place where it's not linear. It's not like we take measured steps of independence. This is where we can want independence in some areas, but then want to snuggle with our parents until 2:00 in the morning talking about everything. So just because they want it in some areas doesn't mean they're always going to act like it, so don't expect that. But it is the task of teenagerhood to take those steps to independence. Another reason your teens might resist some holiday fun and cheer is because it's overstimulating. Crowded rooms, there's maybe relatives that they haven't seen in forever who are asking a million questions. There's pressure to perform socially. That can be a lot. Teenagers are in a stage where they're very often really self-conscious about what's going on. And again, imagine for a minute you are 15, 16 and you don't know what your next step is going to be. You don't know what you plan on majoring in or what you're going to do for college or anything. And now all of a sudden you're thrown into a big room with a bunch of people and there's things happening and you've got relatives asking you all about your future plans. It can just be really exhausting and really overwhelming and overstimulating. I think it's also important for parents to remember that whenever we're asking the teens in our life to go spend time doing family things, very often that means we're asking them to spend time away from their friends. And they are in a stage of development where they ought to be prioritizing their peers. This happens to all teenagers one way or another, where they are prioritizing their friends, their social group, all of that stuff takes center stage. And things happen really fast. It's like dog years in teenager land, I think, with social things. You can miss out on one afternoon of, your friend group, and whole worlds can change as a result. So even missing out on just a few events can feel like a really, really big deal in a teen's life because of the social stuff that's going on. Again, normal, natural, healthy. And then one other piece that we don't talk about nearly enough for the teens in our life is that they are controlled often. The amount of things they have to do, the way they spend their time, the places they're allowed to be in, they don't often get a lot of choice or say in the matter. And so what happens when somebody feels like they are controlled a lot is that they will resist that. And often the way they resist that is by trying to exert control in other ways, which might look like, no, you tell me where to go 9 times out of 10, I get to choose this 10th one. Okay, I'm choosing it. I'm going to decide not to go. There's passive resistance and active resistance, and often you see both of them come out around the holidays when teens are asked to go do something that might not be their top choice. So what I hope from parents is that you spend a few minutes, hours, longer than you might have otherwise, thinking about it from your teen's perspective, putting yourself in their shoes and just thinking about why they might be resistant right now, what's going on for them. Be curious. Don't go straight to defensiveness about the fact that they don't want to go hang out with you and, pumpkin spice, but be curious about why and what else is going on for them. That, I think, goes a long way to your relationship with them. And maybe there's stuff going on that you don't know, and then that gives you the opportunity to have those conversations too. Okay, so understanding their perspective, looking at it through their lens, remembering that this resistance is totally normal, all important things. And then the next part, though, is the solution part. Like, okay, so what do we do with that knowledge? What do we do with that information? And the first thing I want to remind you of is that they don't need to be a perfect participant, and they don't need to participate in the way that they used to when they were younger either. They are not 10 years old again. They are however old they are, but that comes with a different set of attitude and a different set of their own priorities, all sorts of things. So don't expect them to just engage in the way they did when they were younger. And remember that a little goes a long way. So they don't need to go to every single event. They don't need to go for the entire time. And they don't need to be the perfect model participant either. There's a lot of ways to show up. And one of the most important things, I think, for parents when you're at this stage with a reluctant teen is to be grateful that they're there. If they are giving a little, they're giving a lot. And account for that. Be grateful for that. That's a huge gift that they're giving. So when I have parents in my office all stressed out because their teen doesn't want to go to dinner at grandma's this Christmas, one of the things they don't want to hear is that this has a lot more to do with whether or not the teen goes to grandma's at Christmas this year, but it has a lot more to do with the relationship that you've been building with them from all time. Whether your teen participates happily in holiday gatherings has almost nothing to do with the actual event itself. It has to do with the relationship that you've been building all year long. So a couple of important questions. Do your teens feel respected and heard in your home? Do they have a voice? Do you give them some agency in the decisions that, affect them and that are important to them? Do you make space for their interests, even if they're not your thing? Do you acknowledge their world, their interests, their hobbies, their friends, their music, their pursuits matter as much to them as your world does? Those traditions, the holidays, the rituals, those matter to you, yes, but you've got to give the fact that your teens' things matter to them every bit as much. So if you can honestly say yes, if you can do an inventory of those things and say yes, then you've got a great foundation for talking to your teen about what's important to you, about having creative solutions and compromises. If the answer is no, you have a different set of things to focus on. And I've got tools for those too, but you've got to go back and work on the basics of your relationship and not just worry about, is your kid showing up to sit on grandma's couch this December? A big piece of thinking creatively about all of these things is being able to compromise. So I have a couple of tools for you in different ways that you can compromise. So if your teen is reluctant but willing to give some, then you might compromise with some time limits. You might ask that they just come for the dinner part, but you don't have to stay for all of dessert. Or skip dinner and just come for dessert, whatever it is. You can be creative with how much time you ask them to be there. You can invite them to bring a friend. Please, for the love of all that's good, open up your homes and your traditions to their friends. This does a couple of things. Number one, it acknowledges the fact that teenagers need their friends around them. That's just part of teenagerhood. So invite their friends. I've never personally understood the families that don't allow all sorts of people. Growing up, we always had the family that everyone was welcome. You could bring one friend, you could bring 8 friends, all ages brought friends. I always loved it growing up. I loved it as a kid. I love it as an adult. I love getting to be a part of other people's holiday traditions. I learned so much about how families work, about other cultures, about religions. I credit doing that kind of thing with part of why I'm a therapist, because I'm fascinated by family dynamics. I think it's a hugely beneficial thing on a lot of different levels. I think that sometimes the friend that your teen brings is also more capable of seeing that holiday magic and articulating their gratitude than sometimes your teen is. Your teen might take some things for granted. Your friend or their friend might, be able to point out how cool it is that you all bake cookies together or y'all sing or whatever it is. And so I like that teens get a slightly different perspective when they bring a friend around. I think it shows that you're paying attention to what's important to them. You're allowing them space. I think that it's a win-win all around. Another way to compromise is just alternate plans. So whether it's based on time or just, let's do this on this day instead. So, okay, you want to go do something else on Christmas Eve or you're overwhelmed by all the family. That's cool. Let's go do it in this other way. Or we don't have to go to their house. We can go do this thing instead. Come up with alternate plans and see which thing solves the problem. Having flexible expectations is another real big one. If they need to go retreat for a little while, they've sat on the couch, they've made the small talk, everyone saw them, go let them take a walk, go let them hide out in another room. In our family, all the time we joke because we always bring double the number of cars that's necessary to anything, because invariably half of each family need to escape at some point. Some of us like to stay for hours and hours and hours, and other, usually our spouses, we want to stay, and our spouses would like to go after a little while. They've had enough. They go and take naps, or they go leave. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they stay at home, but everyone can relax when we bring 2 cars, because then everyone can leave when they want to. It's a little harder sometimes if you've got a non-driving teen or if distance is an issue, but you can be creative with that. Have them bring their phone and some headphones and they can go hang out in the other room. Let them escape a little bit. Just have some flexible expectations. Something else also is letting them decide. You can make it clear to them that it doesn't matter just because you bake cookies every single Christmas Eve with so-and-so. You don't have to do that again. If the goal is to spend time with your teenager, then maybe they have an idea of a new thing that you can do. And you can let them know that the thing itself isn't important, it's spending time with them. That's the thing that matters to you. Okay, a couple of what not to do's. I'm not trying to call anybody out, but sometimes we need some calling out. So in as a nice a way as possible, don't do these things. Don't guilt trip. Please don't guilt trip your teenagers, all right? Don't tell them they're going to ruin the holidays for everybody. Don't do that. It's not going to make them want to come anymore. It's not going to make them feel closer to you. It's going to build resentment and make everybody upset. So just no guilt tripping. Don't compare them. Especially, things like, well, your cousin Sarah always is happy to come caroling or go to church or come to dinner or whatever it is. Don't compare them to other people. Don't do that about anything ever, but essentially when you compare your kid to somebody else who's acting in a way that you want them to act, all they're hearing is you saying, I wish you were someone else. Not made for holiday magic. Don't force performance. Don't shove them into a scenario where they have to act like an unnatural them, where they have to pretend anything. Let them, if they're going to be there, let them be them. If they're a little moody, if they're a little pouty, if they're a little quiet, if they're a little cocoony, let them be whoever they are. I want you to remember that there is a much bigger picture here, that it's not just about this one holiday, this one evening, this one event, that there is a much bigger picture of you accepting your teenager, of you saying, I like you how you are, I want you around. This holiday experience is made better by you being here, and I love you. And you do that by accepting them. Don't make it be about your reputation, all right? I think a lot of what comes up for parents around this time, especially when you're involving extended family, is some fear and worry about what your what those people will think, whether it's extended family or, other people in your communities. There's fear that so-and-so will find your teenager rude or sullen or will judge you and your parenting. This is a you thing. This is not your teenager's problem that you are worried about what so-and-so will think. You need to take some honest assessment of that and do what you need to do to compartmentalize and to realize that that person who's judging you, they don't know the whole story. They are not in your family. They are not in your head. And it's more about them and their story anyway. So they don't matter nearly as much as your relationship with your teenager. I also want to say on this note that sometimes it's not just like, oh, I'm worried that, Aunt Linda will think that my teenager is being a little rude. That sometimes it's a much bigger fear of your teen rejecting your values. That there are some pieces of this, whether it's religious or cultural or just familial, that are deeply important ideals or values for you. And if your teen resists those events, it can feel like they're resisting or rejecting the values themselves. Not just rejecting you, but rejecting the values. I need you to take a deep breath and remember that it's not all that for them. It might be a little. It could be. This piece of them differentiating themselves is a real one. It's an important one. And sometimes they're differentiating themselves from your values, from the things that you hold nearest and dearest. That's okay. They get to do that. I want to remind all of you worried parents that they often come back around. This happens over and over again, where they go through a period of needing to separate themselves, but at some point in their life, they will, if they have a great foundation and they have a relationship with you, those values tend to come back around. It might look a little different than how you experienced it yourself, but 9 times out of 10, I want to say that, I don't know, I shouldn't make up numbers, but very, very often in my professional experience, if you don't make it a point of contention with your teenager and they're allowed to walk away from it, they very, very often freely walk back to it. And please, if they do, don't make a comment. Don't make comments about, well, you didn't like this last year, or, oh, you swore you were never going to eat meat again and yet you're eating the Christmas ham. Don't do that. Don't make comments. Let them come back. Let them go away. Let them come back again. So a lot of parents at this point go, okay, so Roya, you're basically just saying I get to let my teens just opt out of anything they want to. They just don't feel like coming to this thing that's super important to me. They get to just decide on their own they don't want to. No, I'm not quite saying that. I do think that having expectations of your kids and of your teens is important. I think sometimes there's a bigger picture and that matters to you. But I think that you need to just be really open and honest about that and not make a kid do something that they don't want to do just for the sake of making them do it or just because this is how it's always been done. I think you need to choose when you exert some more coercion or encouragement. You need to make really conscious choices about when you play that card. And again, all of this is so much easier to do when you've got the relationship with them where you can say, hey, look, this one is really important to me. I get that you don't want to do it. I get that this isn't your top thing that you want. You might not even believe in this thing anymore. I think it's really important, and I would really love if you could trust me or give me the gift of showing up, even if it's just for 20 minutes and then you can go. You have to have the relationship built to be able to ask that of them. And there's a couple other instances where you might have to kind of hold the line, a safety issue. If they aren't a driver yet, they probably can't drive away from the event whenever they want to, right? They can't leave because they can't. If there are some, like I said, core value things that are non-negotiable for you, be honest about that. You can talk to them about that, but you have to be also honest about the possible consequences of that. And there's some basic respect things, like even if they don't want to be there, maybe they don't get to swear at grandma, they don't get to ruin everybody else's experience. I think that that's a bigger conversation than just the holiday events, just again, based on the relationship that they have with you, you can ask them to give the gift of a particular attitude or I know you don't want to be here and you don't get to yell at people or whatever it is. Everybody shows up in some way. How you show up is up to you. That's the thing that matters to me. But whether it's this holiday event or any other thing, it's important to me that you show up as a decent human being, or compassionate that this is important for other people, or, that kind of thing. You can sort of plead to their bigger personness, that it's bigger than them and what they're feeling right there, but that you recognize that this is something that they're giving. So I'm recording this in September, and I was just sitting here thinking about, I'm a therapist, I work with parents, and it's easy for me to sit here and have this professional perspective. And I can see from a big picture the ways that can open doors between parents and their kids, and the ways that slam those doors and just leave a wall. But this is hard for me too. I will say this is the first year my oldest is super excited to go trick-or-treating with just his friends this year. I'm having some feelings about that, not gonna lie. For the last however many years, we have had a tradition of we have a family-themed costume. It's a loose theme often, but it's a family one. We go together. It's been a very sweet tradition for me. And the thing that I'm trying to do, and what I hope to help other parents do, is try really hard to remember that my job is not to control my kids. That's not my job. My job is to try to build a family culture that they want to belong to. And ideally, as my kid is trick-or-treating around the neighborhood with his buddies, that when they run into us, they're excited to see us, and maybe they go a door or two with us before they take off. That is part of his job as a kid, is to spend that time with his friends, to enjoy freedom at every new step, to be excited by that. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, and if I can change my perspective and remember that, that's helpful for me too. How amazing and lovely it is that we live in a place where he can do that. He's got friends that they want to do that with him, that I feel safe enough about our neighborhood and our community, that I know all the people whose doors he's knocking on, things like that, and that I am there when he comes back, and that later that night that we will unwrap candy, and he'll save all his Reese's for me, and he'll tell me the stories, and he'll share, I'm going to tear up just thinking about this right now, but where he'll tell me the stories of so-and-so doing this silly thing, and how they knocked on this door, and this happened, and that house had this kind of candy, and oh, did you see that person in that costume? That he's still going to want to connect with me, even if he doesn't want to spend every minute with me. And that's my job as a parent, and that's my goal this Halloween, is to be the person who sent him off with open arms and a couple of hey don't forgets, and then be the person where he wants to come back and share it with me after it happened. So I'm there too, y'all. Look at, I made some stars. I'll put pictures up. If you need help navigating any more of these teenage moments, don't forget that I have a free parenting workbook. It's about 40 pages full. It's so full, it's so good, and just chock full of exercises, writing prompts, other resources, things like that. And so it's a free guide for parents navigating the teenage years, and it's available at launchanxiety.com, and I'll post links to it wherever I can. And take care, y'all. Happy holidays. That's all for today's episode of Launch Anxiety Podcast. Just a reminder, you can head to my website, launchanxiety.com, and get my 20-plus page downloadable PDF, A Parent's Guide to Navigating Launch Anxiety. It's full of tools and resources and so many things to help you and your teens as they lift off to adulthood.